with the Texas Homeless Network. Welcome to our April RPG meeting. We've got a few folks in the room from THN today. Mary Dodson, our CoC Program Manager, Caitlin Baer, our CoC Program Coordinator, Lindsay Marsh, our Data Coordinator, Craig Fierro, our Program Assistant, and myself. So thank you all for joining us. We hope our little pre-webinar was helpful in describing the software that we use for most of our meetings with you all. And right now we're just taking a look at the map of registrants for today's meeting. As you can see, we have folks from all over the state and all over the balance of state. We hope to continue to see more of these red dots. Mary is excited and making very happy faces about this map. So again, just thrilled to have you all on the call and representing your communities and projects. We recognize it is challenging for us to communicate with all of you because we're in Austin and you are not. And this is one of the best ways, and it's unfortunate it can't be in person, but it is one of the best ways for us to keep you in the loop and support you all and answer your questions. So just thankful that everybody is on the call and great to see such representation from across the state. So we're going to move on to CoC current priority projects, and for those of you who didn't see the webinar, please, or the pre-PowerPoint webinar, note that you can always ask questions or raise your hand in the chat box. We've also pre-loaded some of the handouts from the meeting there that you can download. So for current priority projects, the first that we're going to discuss is going to be our point-in-time count and housing inventory count, and Lindsay is going to share some information with us about that.
Hey everyone, this is Lindsay. Just a brief update on how the housing inventory count went as well as the point-in-time count. Everything took place on January 21st, and for the balance of state this year, we have 6,432 people. That is 2,582 individuals who are unsheltered and 3,850 who are sheltered at the moment. And by sheltered, I mean in emergency shelter or transitional housing. There are 197 projects in the balance of state, and we have 7,010 year-round beds. And yes, we have a slight decrease in the number of homeless individuals from last year. So congratulations, everyone, for stepping up your game, not only in counting people for the point in time, but also getting them housed. We will be having a follow-up webinar on the point in time shortly, I would say at least by the end of May, and we will discuss things that we will be doing differently for next year, ways to improve your count, and we will also briefly talk about a session that we will have at our annual conference in September that I would highly encourage everyone to attend. So if you're going to be at our annual conference this September, we're really going to encourage you to attend a workshop that we're going to have that explains how the housing inventory fits together with a point in time and how those numbers affect the entire balance of state, and we're going to be putting those two pieces into the puzzle and showing you the bigger picture. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Lindsay.
You're welcome.
As Lindsay stated, so I think in that follow-up webinar, we're going to really be reviewing how PITs were conducted this year and potential ways to improve your PIT count. I think also highlight some changes that have happened with THN and the point-in-time counts over the past few years, and also just discussing some of the kind of common mistakes we saw this year and want to help and support you all with those, and also help you determine who in your coalition is best to be leading your PIT count in your community. So just want to thank you all again for your work on that. Our community reports are up on the website. I think we've got 2 we're still working on, the rest are there. And then we are also working on this year a more in-depth balance of state point-in-time report, and it will also include more general information about homeless statistics and data in the balance of state. So we're looking forward to sending that out to all of you once that is completed. Next on our agenda is the Provider Connect workshops and project reviews for CoC program grantees. Those of you that have been on our previous calls know that we have conducted 7 workshops around the state to meet with all of our CoC funded grantees. They've been incredibly, I think, eye-opening for grantees, very helpful for THN staff. It was truly a pleasure for me to get to know all of you. Following those workshops, we're doing in-depth reviews with each project, and again, just really wanting to be very transparent about how you're being scored, at least for the last program competition, areas for improvement, and strengths, of which there are many for our project. So we are working on, have scheduled some of those second round of reviews, and we'll be working on those through the beginning of June. Also, for CoC grantees, you should have received an email from me this week with some HUD updates. If for some reason you did not, please let Mary Dodson know. You can email Mary. Again, our very easy email addresses here at THN. She's just Mary, M-A-R-Y, @thn.org. I feel like we're pretty certain we've got a solid list there, but there was a notice about the fiscal year 2016 program competition, and just want to make sure you all know that this initial announcement is just for collaborative applicants, and that means it's just for the balance of state. So you all don't need to do anything yet, but news is coming soon on the competition, and we do expect it to happen earlier this year than last year. We have also, as I've told you all before, okay. Sorry, y'all, just wanted to make sure we weren't having any audio issues. If anyone can't hear, please let us know in the chat box. Tier 2, we know some of our projects are still waiting to hear on fiscal year 2015 competition. We are waiting to hear as well, and I promised you all if I heard anything that I would let you know, and we've heard some rumors and are pretty confident that Tier 2 funding announcements will go out late this week or early next week. Again, I am not HUD. I can make no guarantees, but the rumors are swirling, and we're expecting to hear news soon. So just wanted to let you all know about that. And as soon as, of course, that's released, we'll be sending an email out to everyone to let you all know the results of the Tier 2 funding. And I believe next Mary is going to talk to us about the most recent TDHCA ESG competition.
Hello everyone, this is Mary Dodson. I spoke with some of you over the past few weeks if you were applying for state ESG funding. Our balance of state's role in that was to help work with you to get attachment A completed, and that was a form that TDHCA is using and you needed to submit that showed your level of participation in the CoC, as well as consulting with our THN staff so we better understood your project design and your outcome targets and just got a better idea of what you were proposing to do. So the biggest part of that was the consultations that we held. And again, as I said, we're looking at your program design, and if you were a collaborative applicant, what the lead agency was going to do versus the partner agencies and how that all would work together. And then what the performance targets were and why they were set where they were. So we actually had 24 projects apply or consult with us, and that represented 57 agencies in our CoC, which is a pretty significant number. And overall, again, what we wanted to do is similar to what we've been doing with the CoC program funded projects that Cameron just mentioned with the project reviews, is really to get a better understanding of what you're currently doing and what you're proposing to do to see if it aligns with our CoC goals and maybe push you just a little bit to aim higher on your performance projections. So some of the results were that we had great conversations. I think we all learned a lot through these, and you all were able to tell us, help us better understand your program. And again, if your targets looked a certain way and we questioned them, you were either able to explain or find the reason. And I think that was the biggest and best outcome, was that we better understand your projects, and I believe that all of you do now too. And of course, it was a great way to lay some groundwork for some future work that we'll do between CoC and ESG. We wanted to point out some specific changes after the consultations. Some of them were small, but some of them were incredibly significant. So I've listed some for you here. In one case, the number of persons in street outreach who will receive case management. When the applicant initially filled out our survey, they said only 17% of people that they would work with in street outreach would get case management. But after talking with this particular applicant, they were able to feel comfortable increasing that percentage to 80%, which I think was the most significant jump that we saw across all of the ESG proposed activities. And really it was just about their better understanding what street outreach is. They're looking back at what their data was actually showing that they're already doing, which was much more than 17%. But without the conversation, they might not have even examined that target more closely. So that one was exciting. On emergency shelter, moving people into permanent housing destinations, we saw a lot of changes in those numbers, and I put some of the bigger changes there, from 29% to 75%, 50% to 70%, 52% to 80%. I mean, these are really dramatic changes that people felt comfortable making, again, as a result of our consultations, and they're looking at their program design and their current performance. In the other activities, we had some great changes too. People exiting from homelessness prevention to permanent housing destination. I had quite a few discussions with folks about, the point of homelessness prevention is really to help people stay in the housing that they already have. So we would expect that the outcomes of people staying in that, or as HUD phrases it, exiting to permanent housing that they're already in, would be really significant. And I think that was eye-opening to a lot of people. They hadn't thought about it in quite that way. And so you'll see we did have some pretty significant jumps there too. One applicant tripled their projection from 31%, yes, yay, 31% to 90%. And another one doubled it from 52 to 100. I mean, 100, obviously, you can't get any better than that. And we know not everyone is going to be able to project 100%. But just wanted to show you, if this wasn't your application, it can still be done. And then the last one was number of persons exiting from rapid rehousing to a permanent housing destination. That jump wasn't quite so significant, but I will say that was the highest percentage of exits to permanent housing that we saw, even higher than homelessness prevention. So people are really doing well in their rapid rehousing programs in terms of exiting people to permanent housing destinations. I also want to say part of the reason we want to have these consultations is so that we can better understand the nuances of your programs. We recognize that not every project is going to be able to have targets this high. If you've got, for example, people who have more barriers to finding permanent housing, things like maybe they have a criminal history, or they're a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault, or for whatever reason in your community that these targets might not be achievable right now, we at least just wanted to talk with you about that and better understand that. And so I thank all of you who were willing to really dig into the weeds with me and explain what was happening. Another key outcome that we saw was a lot of partnering in collaborative projects. Victim services providers, either some of them applied as single applicants, some of them applied as partners with other homeless services providers. We saw a few groups partner with their community action agencies that cover their area, and those groups are really skilled and experienced in many cases at providing homelessness prevention assistance, like rental assistance and utilities assistance. So they can be a great partner for homelessness prevention. Mental health care providers, specifically we were looking at some that were doing street outreach as well as providing supportive services, partnering with veteran services providers, faith-based organizations, education services, city governments. I mean, you all are getting really creative with how your collaborative projects are coming together, and we love to see that because it really just benefits our clients when we can have everybody working together. All right, another outcome that we talked a lot about in our consultations was using your data as a guide for setting your performance targets. Some of you had already done that work where you really looked at either your current ESG project or a CoC program funded project, or whatever kind of project you've already been running to project your performance. And so we wanted to point out, like, if your performance has been really high already, we encourage you to set your targets at that level. Even if the score sheet doesn't award more points for a higher target, or even if you are a little nervous about over projecting, we want to encourage you to try to aim at least as high as you've been performing if you have high performance. If your performance isn't as high as you'd like it to be, we would encourage you to learn the reasons why and address those reasons and then try to aim higher. And of course, we are always here to work with you on that. Review your data, talk about best practices, connect you to another agency doing similar work, however it is that we can help you, because we really do want this to be a helping endeavor, not a shake our finger at you effort. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about, as with so many things you're hearing today, we're going to be having more trainings in the future, very near future, on CoC and ESG coordinating together more closely, specifically with state ESG that TDHCA administers. They are, as you know, looking at CoCs taking over at least the competition for these ESG funds, if not the administering of the funds as well. So we're gearing you up for that, and we might have higher target expectations, for example, or different ways that we would want to score the project applications. And so we'll be talking more about that. We will also be talking about how we're going to work more closely with the ESG recipients. Those are the 9 agencies or organizations within the balance of state that receive ESG funding directly from HUD. One of them is TDHCA, but the others are individual cities and counties. And we'll be working with those groups on their consolidated plans and annual action plans which is how they tell HUD what they're planning to do with the money. And there are several pieces of that that are important for homeless services, including a homeless needs assessment, current housing resources, and how the recipient plans to allocate ESG funds. So we'll be talking about how we can make those allocations align more closely with what our CoC goals are, if they don't already. Also, CAPERS, the annual performance reports, and ESG written standards coinciding and incorporating our CoC written standards. And then we'll also be working with ESG applicants for TDHCA's program, similarly to how we did this year on the Attachment A forms, talking about those same topics. And then for all ESG subrecipients, whether it's through TDHCA or through a city or county, focusing a little bit more on achieving the HEARTH Act goals and performance, and again, incorporating your ESG written standards and our CoC written standards, which Caitlin will be talking about in a few minutes. So great job, everyone. Thank you again so much for consulting with us. I know it can be a little scary to see an email from us saying, we have a bunch of questions for you and we want to talk about this. But I truly believe we all learned a lot and had some really much more competitive and better designed programs as a result. So thank you.
This is Cameron. I just wanted to echo what Mary said. I know this process was different this year for everyone, not specifically the information we were asking for, but how we were responding to it and asking thoughtful questions and really encouraging projects to take a look at their data, which again, we know you all are hearing that from us from every direction, and that will continue to be the case. But I think it was also a good opportunity for us to recognize the systems we need to put in place to better support ESG, and also just as and we'll talk a little more later in this meeting, looking at systems change and coordinated entry, ending veteran homelessness, really the need and role for not only our ESG funded projects, our CoC funded projects, but our local homeless coalitions and all of our projects in the balance of state that are serving this population. There's such a need. If we are all not collaborating and communicating, we're not going to be able to get this work done. I think together is the only way, and that's definitely our goal. So we're going to be looking to you all to help us help you, and really looking to our coalitions to be up to speed on all of these funding sources and expectations so that you all can help us lead these efforts in your communities where what will work well and the clients you're serving. I think even through the ESG consults, we recognized there were people that needed to be involved in the conversations that weren't, and I think this is only going to improve moving forward. So thank you all for your work with us on that. And I have to say, y'all know we geek out on data and numbers. We were just so thrilled to see those performance measures changes, and you all should be proud of yourselves and your projects. So moving on, and just a reminder, if you all have questions, the chat box is there. Caitlin is going to give us an update on ending veteran homelessness.
Well, hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Caitlin. I am the CoC Programs Coordinator. One of my main roles here at THN is working with our Supportive Services for Veteran Families grantees. We call them SSVF grantees for short. So I'm working with them because they've been working with this population for a while, the veteran population, on an initiative to end veteran homelessness for the entire balance of state CoC. One of our first steps in doing that was to establish a definition. I presented on that back in, I believe it was February, to let you guys know what the timeline for establishing a definition of an end to veteran homelessness would be, and I am proud to announce now that the CoC board voted on March 9th to adopt this definition, and I have Craig putting it up here on the screen so that way you can look at it. It's in this really big document, but it's right in the middle where it says definition. I'll go ahead and read it just because I'm super proud of it. It is, an end to veteran homelessness means that the community will have a systematic response in place that ensures homelessness among veterans is prevented whenever possible or is otherwise a rare, brief, and non-recurring experience. Specifically, the community will have the capacity to quickly identify and engage veterans at risk of and experiencing homelessness, to intervene to prevent the loss of housing and divert veterans from entering the homeless service system, to provide immediate access to shelter and crisis services without barriers to entry while permanent stable housing and appropriate supports are being secured. And when homelessness does occur, we can quickly connect veterans to housing assistance and services tailored to their unique needs and strengths to help them achieve and maintain stable housing when homelessness does occur. And in order to measure our progress towards this goal, we're going to be employing the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, or USICH, criteria and benchmarks. Those are available on the USICH website, and I am hoping to make a couple of short little videos that I can put out for you guys to kind of unpack each of those standards individually and help you understand what those mean and how you might be able to do them in your different communities. So that definition was approved by the CoC board on March 9th and is now in effect. So if your community is working on an initiative to end veteran homelessness, this is the standard we are holding you to. And that's not to say that I will not be providing you guys with as many tools and resources and guides and education that I can. Getting to that, I wanted to let you all know that on March 30th, our SSVF grantees met for our quarterly meeting, and during that meeting we did a couple of polls about the sort of educational materials that work best for at least the SSVF grantees. I'm assuming maybe that could be translated to most service providers, about the format in which you wish to receive any educational assistance on ending veteran homelessness, and then the topics that would like to be covered. So the ones that got the highest votes were having YouTube videos and some PDFs that you can kind of leaf through at your own pace. So those are the kinds of resources that I'm going to be trying to put out probably in the summertime when things kind of slow down here for a little while before the NOFA gets released. I also want to let you guys know that there was an Ending Veteran Homelessness Bootcamp webinar that happened on the 15th. I'm going to be going over that at the webinar watch list at the end of today's meeting. And let's see, was there anything else? We have definition, we did the regional meeting, and the bootcamp webinar, and educational materials are forthcoming. That does actually cover all of my bullet points, so thank you for listening to me ramble. Oh, and I get to go again afterwards. All right. So I'm also going to be talking about the written standards, which is item E on this second paragraph of the agenda. So I'm just going to keep rambling right on through. So written standards are something that are mandated by the CoC interim rule. And we, as the Balance of State lead agency, are supposed to make these standards specifically for our CoC program grantees about who gets services and how services are provided. And we are doing those by project component type. So right now we are focusing on the permanent supportive housing written standards, and we've come up with a first draft that we feel comfortable sharing with you all and sharing with our board and our ESG folks, as they are also required to collaborate with us and consult with us on the written standards. I'm sorry? Next meeting, we will probably be discussing in more depth the PSH, or Permanent Supportive Housing Written Standards, and you guys will get a chance to look at those, to provide us with feedback and your comments, because at the end of the day, you know, us sitting here in this office can write as many rules as we want, but if they're not going to be feasible for you, that's not great for anybody. So your feedback is very, very important to us. So do make sure that you show up for May's meeting, because it will be an important one for those of you that run PSH, but also for those of you that run other programs, because after we do the PSH written standards, we'll be working on rapid rehousing and transitional housing written standards. So we're going to be getting those approved by the CoC board, correct, Karen, after we're done with this consultation process. So we'll make sure we keep you guys apprised of our process and what is inside of those written standards that we will expect to hold our CoC program grantees too. And that does it for me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Caitlin. I think, you know, with written standards, again, this is part of our responsibilities as the continuum of care, and there are certain requirements that, you know, we didn't create and some that we will, and some that, you know, we'll definitely need your feedback on. We're excited to be getting these done. We're excited to collaborate with CoC projects and ESG and those unfunded projects as well. So thank you all in advance for your participation with that. And I am going to move on to HMIS data quality. This is going to be really quick. If you haven't noticed a theme, it's data. It's not going to stop. It's not going anywhere. It's going to continue to increase. We are working with our CoC grantees and ESG grantees on a new data quality plan, which will, and also a new report card. When Caitlin reviews some of the webinars to watch and the upcoming events in a few moments, that our most recent webinar on UDQs will be listed there. Most unfortunately, we forgot to hit record for that webinar, but I think you all are going to benefit from it because it gave Jesus time to make it like incredibly entertaining. I, for one, was very impressed. I told him he should have never let me see that he could do that with the webinar because, well, there's no telling what kind of fantastic entertainment we may be creating for you all from this point forward. But I just want to stress, you know, the data is key, right? It's what we submit to HUD. It's what needs to be driving your project decisions. It's what your current funders and other funders are looking at. You're gonna be hearing about this from us consistently. And with data quality, you know, we've got, I don't know how many projects in HMIS right now, probably, if not 200, close to. We're working with a lot of folks across the state. Please, please ensure, regardless of your funding source, that you are, one, responding to our HMIS team, responding promptly to these report corrections, and informing us if you have a new HMIS contact. I cannot tell you the amount of time staff spends kind of chasing people to figure out who the right person is. It's in our current HMIS agreement with anyone who's using the system, and will be stressed in the future that we really need you all to make sure we have an updated contact for you. The data is going to become more and more important. We are setting, you know, deadlines for these reports that we're sending out on a quarterly basis so that we can track data as it's coming in and help work with you and support you to address any issues. We are setting timelines on the responses for those for CoC and ESG funded projects, and those things will be taken into consideration in scoring for both of those program types. For those projects that are not receiving funding, we're going to be holding you to that same standard soon. It is so important as a system that our data is accurate and complete and timely. So if you have not, please watch that webinar. Please contact us with any questions. Also, just want to encourage you all, if you're looking at your reports and you see something that doesn't look right, it's probably because it's not. You know the services you're providing, you know what your outcomes are. So if something doesn't look or feel right with a report, it's either something we need to work on in your program or project setup, or there's a data entry error happening. So please, please reach out if you see something that concerns you. Our HMIS team is here to help. And this is a nice segue into system-wide performance measures. So system-wide measures, HUD developed these, it was 2014. We've been waiting since then for HMIS to catch up. We finally got these performance measures put into our system, as did most systems and vendors across the country in January of this year. This is pretty huge for our COCs and of course balances of state across the country, and it's really, again, ties all into the systems change work we're doing, and it's really about HUD looking at our system. We're still looking at individual project performance, but there is a huge shift towards looking at what your system is doing, and you'll hear us talk about a crisis response system when we're talking about CE and systems change. So as a whole, what does the data say that the Texas balance of state is doing? And again, this is coming back to the importance of everybody's data. Everybody's data is going to impact funding for everybody, whether you're a current grantee, whether you want to be a future grantee, whether you have grantees in your community providing much needed services to your clients. This impacts you. It impacts all of us. So again, it's going to be, interesting around here for a little while as we are looking at data elements that we've never looked at as a system before. We've got new reports pulling from, different universes in our HMIS system that we haven't looked at before. We are also, HUD is going to require that we do a look back period back to 2012 for a lot of this data, which is going to be very interesting. The last webinar I was on, they were speaking as to, one, continuums of care with a large geography, continuums of care with a lot of programmatic changes, so new programs, exiting programs, new geography. We've gained and merged with other COCs in the past few years, so our data from year to year is going to vary, and it's going to be a lot more work for us, but we're really looking forward to this, and again, geeking out, but we're excited about these because we want to see what they're going to be looking like in the system. So system performance measures and context, I'm not going to go through these. One, I'll probably just read the 7. This is an uploaded document. There is all kinds of fascinating reading on system performance measures on the HUD site. I really strongly encourage you all to look at, because it is going to change the way we're operating the balance of state here, and it's going to change our scoring. So those 7 performance measures, and again, they're helping communities gauge their progress in preventing and ending homelessness, are the length of time persons remain homeless. HUD is really wanting to see that folks are not homeless longer than 30 days. So those entering the system that are not chronically homeless are exiting within 30 days. I know as a former provider that sounds a little unrealistic. It's a goal and it's a target, and it's one we need to start working towards. We know the challenges in barriers to housing and available housing, and I want you all to know that we know that. Number 2, the extent to which persons who exit homelessness to permanent housing destinations return to homelessness. This one is huge, right? Recidivism. So if you're housing 30 clients a year, that's amazing. But if half of those clients end up in the shelter within that same year, we need to figure out what's going on. So HUD, when I worked for the Austin COC, we were trying to work on our own reports to look at this. It was incredibly challenging. So we're happy HUD has finally put this into the HMIS system, so you can really see if folks are sustaining their housing, right? And maybe they didn't get the right housing intervention the first time around, but just something we absolutely need to be looking at. We're also looking at the number of homeless persons in our community, jobs and income growth for homeless persons, and that one is just for COC funded projects at this time. And really that's something we're already tracking. Number of persons who become homeless for the first time. This is a new one. And again, this is going to help you all and help us right-size your system in your community. It's really important to know not only who you're housing, but how many new families and individuals are entering your system at any given time. Homelessness prevention and housing placement of persons defined by Category 3 of HUD's homeless definition and CoC funded projects. There is not currently a CoC in the country getting funded to serve Category 3, so that one is not applicable yet. And then 7 is successful housing placement. And again, that's looking at housing placements and returns to homelessness, right? We want to see that that housing is sustainable. Some of these measures pull directly from HMIS. Some, I said, are just for CoC funded projects. Some are from our point in time count, but we're looking at all of our data, funded, unfunded, PIT, HIC, everything. So again, if you think this doesn't apply to you, if you're providing homeless services in the balance of state, it absolutely does. And I, again, would really encourage you all to educate yourselves and your coalitions on these measures, because we're going to be eating, breathing, and sleeping them very soon. And we do expect to see some form of these in the competition notice this year. Before we move on, because I know that was a lot and a lot of us talking, does anybody have any general questions about anything that we've reported? And you can raise your hand or chat. Michelle, I'm going to respond to your question individually. And I think if that's all, we're going to move on to Caitlin. She's going to cover some THN webinars to watch and then upcoming conferences we want to make sure you all are aware of. And this handout is in your handout, so you can download it and have the links to all of these fabulous resources.
Yeah. So hello again, everyone. I took the liberty of putting together this really great list of webinars that we thought would be very helpful for a variety of audiences. So I'll go through each one and let you know what each one is about briefly, so you can kind of put circles or stars next to the ones that you want to watch on that Friday afternoon when it's 4 o'clock and you have an hour left, and what are you supposed to do with that hour? Just watch a webinar. It's a good Friday afternoon watching for when your brain doesn't really feel like doing much else. The first webinar you'll see on there is the one that Cameron mentioned about the data quality report. Jesus has done just a phenomenal job with the re-recording of this webinar. Even if you just watch like the first 10 minutes of it, if you're not, if you're not your agency's HMIS person, it is hilarious and wonderful and informative. And of course, our HMIS team are superstars, and they do a great job in everything that they do. It's a very well put together webinar about the new system level performance measures, the report card that THN is coming out with, the data quality plan, and some expectations around data quality. It is a must watch, even if you're not super into HMIS. It's a phenomenal webinar. It's about an hour long. The next one is a coordinated entry and systems change webinar presented by our very own Sophia Cheka. So if you're interested in learning more about how to set up a coordinated entry system in your community, or are looking to get started in just understanding what a coordinated entry system is, or what systems change means, this is a really great webinar for you. It is also about an hour long, and there's a really great question and answer part of it. And if you can manage it, I would suggest that you sit down and watch it with your local homeless coalition, so everyone can be on the same page and speak the same language about coordinated entry and systems change. You can make it a fun afternoon watch party, maybe bring some popcorn. It actually is quite good, and it will help everyone really understand what is meant by coordinated entry and systems change. There's some really fun graphics in there as well if you're a visual learner. The next one I'm just going to shamelessly plug, I did along with Sophia and many of our federal partners, our boot camp on ending veteran homelessness. We contacted what are called the federal partners in the ending veteran homelessness world. So that would be the VA, HUD, and the USICH, or the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. We asked if they would speak on the importance of ending veteran homelessness in your community, and then both Sophia Cheka and I provide some strategies for getting started in an initiative to end veteran homelessness. I will say it's very high level. We don't get too into depth about how exactly to implement a system to end veteran homelessness in your community, but if it's something that you're just getting started in or want to learn more about, it's a really awesome webinar for that purpose, and it's about an hour and a half long, so you might have to take a long lunch for that one. The last one is the Transforming Homeless Services in Pierce County, Washington. This is a phenomenal webinar about a couple of transitional housing projects in Pierce County, Washington that made the decision to make the jump to rapid rehousing and to reallocate their programs. It goes through their decision-making process, how they looked at their data and their program expenditures, and how they were able to serve over twice the amount of people in rapid rehousing as they served in transitional housing. Has anyone watched that webinar since the last meeting? Because I know that we kind of raved about it in February, and that's only because it's so good. Did anyone get a chance to, I don't know if there's a, do we have a poll that we can launch?
I can't watch online, but I can do the account podcast. It's ours, right?
Is the Pierce County?
Yeah.
No, it's not ours. Okay, well, I guess I have no way of figuring out whether or not anyone has watched it yet.
Yeah, I think, so we had asked, we had some folks watch it and said we were going to ask again, so we are now.
Michelle's seen it.
If anyone has watched it and wanted to share a few words, we can unmute you and would love to hear from you. Hold on, we may have a taker.
I know I definitely learned a lot from watching this webinar.
I feel like I need to do the Jeopardy
music, yeah.
Kelly says she will watch it now. She feels guilty.
Don't feel too guilty. It's just, it's really great.
Yeah, and we know that you're all very busy, and I'm sure that you guys get invites to webinars left and right, and it can be hard to filter through all that noise and figure out what's actually useful for you. There were a lot of webinars that we could have put on this recommended viewing list. I picked the best of the best in an attempt to most effectively utilize your time, because I know you have a very limited time for how you can stay informed and keep yourself on the cutting edge of best practices. It can be really hard to do that as you're dealing with clients, as you're dealing with staff, as you're dealing with all these really annoying phone calls from THN. But really hope that you guys will, you know, maybe make some time on a Friday afternoon when your brain's not really in it anyway to just take some notes, you know, reinvigorate yourself and figure out what's exciting about your program again, and to be able to learn more and to go back into your week the following week just ready to make your program awesome, which is what we're all about here.
We did just have a comment from someone who was able to watch it and said very informative, would watch it again because there was so much information from it. And like as Caitlin said, we try and sort through everything for you to give you guys the best of the best, and if we're recommending something, there's a reason. We're also going to, I don't even know if this is a secret or not, and if it is, I'm about to blow it, but we're getting a new website soon.
Yay!
And
Yay! Finally.
soon is relative, but we're working on it. We're going to really try and make sure to have really robust resources on there for you all, and try and, yeah, take some of that off of your shoulders. So in the meantime, we'll be sending out things we think you all would find useful and helpful, and know that, like Caitlin said, we We watch a lot. We read a lot. That's what we do. So if we can do some of it for you, we will, and we do.
Yeah, and we're doing our best to curate this for you guys in a way that's useful. And so we're hoping to be doing more of that in the future, so that way you guys don't have to, watch every webinar that comes into your email inbox. But speaking of a webinar that's going to come into your email inbox, we do have one that is mandatory for our CoC grantees, and it is about the VI SPDAT and the FVI SPDAT. The VI SPDAT stands for the Vulnerability Index Service Prioritization Decision Assistance Tool, and the FVI SPDAT is ditto, but F means family. We're making this mandatory for y'all to watch because the VI SPDAT and the FVI SPDAT are going to be part of the written standards for permanent supportive housing, or PSH. We don't have a lot of permanent supportive housing in the balance of state, and so it's really important to us that those individuals who are the most vulnerable and who are going to be the least likely to resolve their homeless situation on their own to be able to get into your programs. So in order to encourage that, we're trying to use a common assessment tool. This will also be very helpful because as we're rolling out coordinated entry in the balance of state, we will be expecting those communities to use the VI SPDAT to prioritize individuals for services. So again, if you are a CoC program funded grantee, you are required to attend, but we hope that it will be a good use of your time. Cameron, are we inviting people who are not CoC program grantees to attend this, or is it just CoC grantees?
It's just grantees at this point. I mean, we're going to be doing another series.
Oh, for the general public?
Yes.
Okay, so general public folks, you guys will not be entirely left out. You just don't get it first. We'll be working with our CoC grantees first, and then I'm sure we'll be coming out with information for the general public once we're ready for it. I don't know when, though.
Yeah, or just other groups that are not funded by HUD CoC program. Which,
like our ESG recipients as well.
ESG, SSBF, RI, HOPWA, PATH, all of you who are connected with us.
And there are two conferences coming up, one in the fall and one in the summer, that we wanted to make you guys aware of both of these conferences. The first is the 2016 National Conference on Ending Homelessness, which is hosted by the National Alliance to End Homelessness, or NAEH. It's in Washington, D.C. on July 26th, and it goes until the 28th. I have never been to this conference myself, but everything I've ever heard about it just sounds phenomenal. There are a lot of national players there. It's a great place to network, and they also have some very informative data-driven sessions, as well as other types of sessions that can help you improve your program or rethink your program design or how you think about dealing with clients. There's something there for everybody. So I would really encourage you to go if your agency can scrape up some funding for maybe one or two folks to go. Is there a question?
I just had a comment. It's an amazing conference.
Yes.
Yes, agreed.
Yes. Everyone in my office can't say enough good things about it. Everyone.
Everything in DC is free.
Yeah.
Seriously, like the museums, all that.
Oh, that kind of stuff.
It's all
Yeah.
free. You're not gonna pay anything.
I was like, no, everything in DC is expensive, but yeah, all of the things you want to see are free. Smithsonian Museum, stuff like that. Yeah, so take a little vacation maybe after the NAEH conference, but it is a conference you won't want to miss if you can find a way to go.
And if anyone goes, please let us know, because we'll probably include you on one of our calls to talk about it after the conference, which we're going to be doing with one of our grantees. He doesn't know it yet, but he'll hear me say this now, who was able to attend the Housing First conference in Los Angeles. I'm talking to you, Alonzo. I'll be in touch soon.
All right, the second conference I wanted to make you all aware of is the Texas Conference on Ending Homelessness, hosted by our very own Texas Homeless Network in partnership with Region 10 Education Service Center and the Texas Homeless Education Office. This is a really super fun conference. I know it sounds like I'm saying that sarcastically, but I enjoy it. This is a great opportunity for you guys to meet with us, for you guys to hear some local stories, for you guys to hear about what solutions are being used in Texas. It also has a really great connection to education providers that deal with homeless children and families. So if that's your purview, this is another really great place for you to be able to reach out to your homeless education offices, your homeless education liaisons. THN members, I will say, also get a discount on their registration. So that's just a little additional incentive for you to sign up. It's going to be here in Austin, Texas, which is a pretty centrally located at Omni South Park. It's very centrally located, not the Omni South Park, but Austin is. So it should be a pretty low travel cost for you guys. It's going to be September 21st through the 23rd, and we do not yet have a registration link available, but you can rest assured that as soon as it is, it will be in an email and it will be in your inbox.
I just wanted to add one thank you, Caitlin. Also, I think y'all are going to see some changes in the conference. I mean, THN every year works to improve the conference every year, but we are going to have a lot more sessions tailored for balance of state community members and grantees. So know that that's coming. We're excited to be able to offer some more kind of streamlined and focused on you all, your communities, your local homeless coalitions, your point-in-time counts. So that's going to be a change that we're really excited about here at THN. So we look forward to seeing you all there. Also, since I'm on a roll with announcing unofficial things, I'm going to keep that right on up. And this is official. We just don't have the details yet, but TDHCA, and this is if you're receiving ESG or wanting to apply and haven't been listening, start listening now. TDHCA is going to be doing, I think, the evening before the conference starts, so the day that we do our pre-conference institutes, we're going to be doing a meeting with TDHCA and ESG current and potential future recipients about potentially dividing the balance of state up into regions for ESG, and that's just going to be in an attempt to spread some of these dollars and get some unused dollars to communities that need them. So I know that's a conversation you all will want to be involved in. It's one that we are having with TDHCA now, and we'll be meeting with them a few times before that conference meeting. But just a heads up on that.
And there's one more thing I wanted to drop about the conference as well for the THN conference. So our representative planning group meeting for September will be on the 21st, and it will be live at the conference. So if you are at the conference and you would like to attend the RPG meeting in person, so if you've ever heard us laughing and clapping and having just a ball over here, we welcome you to come be a part of it in person at the Omni South Park. We'll also still be doing it via webinar for those of you who are unable to attend, but it is really a great time to hang out with us, if I must say so myself. We do want to make sure that you guys know that that is an option for you before the conference begins on the 21st to come and hang out with us for the RPG meeting in September.
Thank you, Caitlin. So, I'm sorry, this is Cameron, that y'all have to hear me talking so much today. Ben and Sophia were unable to join us, so you got stuck. Sophia, just so for coordinated entry update, Sophia held a webinar, as Caitlin mentioned, on the 21st. And again, we've got that link on your handouts page. Also wanted to let you know we have developed a new model for the coordinated entry workflow in HMIS. Sophia is still working with HMIS to develop it. We're really trying to use lessons learned in the pilots and look at other communities to see what has and has not worked. And these are not, I don't want anybody to panic about this. These are not big changes. They're pretty small changes that we think are going to have really positive, significant impacts on coordinated entry. So again, we'll be, of course, sharing that with all of you. And I think you've heard us talk a few times about how we are going to be coming back into our pilot communities which is the plan, and then developing a toolkit and standards for other communities where you all can start working on certain things and really work on, developing that system and help prepare for us to come back in to help you refine and tweak that system to make sure that it meets your community needs, but also that it meets all of HUD's requirements. So for pilot communities, she's going to be holding a webinar in mid-May discussing the new model, how to expand on coordinated entry, standardized referrals, and prioritization don't seem to be happening in communities yet, and that's really where we need to be. And then we're going to be discussing next steps. Can we log in on my computer? Sorry, y'all, technical difficulties. So again, lots of news on coordinated entry coming soon, and for non-pilot communities, Sophia is going to be releasing more materials to aid in implementation over the next few months. And like I said, I know it's on every application you all are filling out, especially as CoC and ESG recipients. I think, and y'all may have heard this from me before, I worked on CE implementation in Austin. We worked on it for 4 years before we did anything, which looking back was too long, but I do want to say, it's a process and it's not a cookie cutter process we can apply across the board to each community. So again, we're coming back to pilot communities. We're going to be giving LHCs some tasks to work on before we do that. And Leslie, I see your question. When I say that we're coming back to pilot communities, we're coming back in person and via webinar. So Sophia and I will be doing a couple webinars, and then we'll be doing an in-person visit. And again, just keep an eye out for those materials to be coming over the next few months and a series of webinars. We also, and I think you've heard me say this before, we do have a timeline, Leslie. I don't have it, and Sophia is not here. But our plan is to be back into the communities by the end of the summer. And we'll release more details for you all as soon as we have them. And Sophia does have them. I just don't have them. If you are not a pilot community, or if you are and you want to discuss systems change and coordinated entry with Sophia, we encourage you to do that. Reach out. Again, our email address is simple. She's sophia@thn.org, SOPHI@thn.org. I'm sorry, IA, thank you. SOPHIA@thn.org. Her work number is 512-861-6286. This information is also on our website. And for those communities, again, that we've not piloted in, we're going to be sending out information and steps, but in the meantime, I would strongly encourage you, and I'm talking to LHC leads and grantees and everyone in your community, to start educating yourselves on this process and what it's going to look like. There's a lot of great resources out there. I would start with USICH, the National Alliance to End Homelessness site, and Corporation for Supportive Housing. We kind of already discussed Pierce County. So I'm going to move on to the Housing First fact sheet. And I'm doing this, one, because, again, if you're not hearing about systems change or data, you're hearing about Housing First from THN and HUD, really. And doing this as an intro to our guest speaker, who I will introduce after we've gone through some of this. NAEH released this brief, a fact sheet on Housing First last week. Again, we try and get you all the most updated, concise information available, and this is one of those things. So what is Housing First? It's a homeless assistance approach that prioritizes providing permanent housing to people experiencing homelessness, thus ending their homelessness and serving as a platform for which they can pursue personal goals and improve quality of their life. The approach is guided by the belief people need basic necessities like food and a place to live before attending to anything less critical, such as employment, budgeting, or attending to or addressing substance use disorders. And it's based on the theory that client choice is valuable in housing selection and supportive service participation, and that exercising that choice is likely to make a client more successful and remain housed and improving their life. I'm not going to go through and read this entire thing to all of you. I know you like to hear me read to you, but I'm not going to read this whole thing. We feel like this is a really good summary and kind of overview of Housing First. I think you've heard us say, you know, it's been the case for the past few years and will continue with this NOFA this year that any new projects are expected to be Housing First projects. We are working with all of our permanent supportive housing and that includes rapid rehousing projects, to be Housing First. Transitional, it can get a little tricky. We definitely want to see low barrier programs and those who can incorporate as much Housing First as possible into their projects to do so. And we're working individually with CoC and all of our CoC funded projects to do that. I think the data is out there on Housing First. You know, when I was with Front Steps in Austin, Texas, who houses the biggest men's shelter and at the time had the second largest amount of permanent supportive housing in the city, we transitioned from a housing ready model to Housing First, and it was one of the most challenging but most rewarding things I've ever had the privilege to be a part of. And I really saw the impact it had on our project and our clients. I cannot tell you, I can't tell you, it really was life-changing, and it really is taking our current models and really flipping them on their heads. And we know this is not easy, but it is worth it. It is also what HUD is saying we need to do, and it's great to be able to say that those things align, because you all know that's not always the case. As projects are making these transitions, please know we are here to support you and work with you through that. You know, it really does take a community approach to this. Obviously, we would like to see CoC projects move to this pretty quickly, but within reasonable timeframes, and kind of set the pace for your community. So we're looking at also the LHCs and the system really adopting and embracing this Housing First model, and are going to ask for your help and support in doing this, and ask you how we can best help and support your community in making these pretty significant project shifts. So again, you know, this is brief. This is a small summary on Housing First, and you know, there's a lot of studies here, but at the bottom of this brief, it includes a lot of resources. It also gives you some numbers you could use from all of these studies that talks about, you know, the cost savings in Housing First, the success rates. Again, we want to be pushing you all to use best practices and evidence-based models and models that work, and Housing First does. So I'm gonna, not wanting to read to y'all more, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties with our guest speaker but he should be joining us really soon. So in the meantime,
You gonna sing us a song?
I'm not going to sing you a song.
You tell jokes.
I don't know if I have any appropriate jokes.
He's here.
He is? Okay, so, yay. I am going to
Hi,
now.
Chad. You are unmuted.
All right. Can you hear me?
Can we hear him?
He's unmuted.
Okay. Technical difficulties resolved. So why housing first? I am happy to introduce Chad Wheeler. He is the South Plains Homeless Coalition president in Lubbock, Texas, and also the executive minister at Carpenters Church, who is a housing first service provider in Lubbock. And we just wanted to ask Chad to join us today to share a little bit about how they sort of completed a transition from a housing ready model to housing first. I know that Chad and his wife and the folks that they work with did a lot of research on their own, and I'm hoping he'll share, some of the key factors in their decision making into this transition, and also about any challenges that they've had implementing housing first in rural areas. So again, Chad is he's a very active LHC leader, active in the balance of state. We are hoping someday soon a grantee of a Housing First project in the balance of state, and we're just thankful he's here. So I'm going to let Chad share for a little while about what this Housing First journey has been like for him in Carpenters Church, and then we're going to take questions.
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hey, Chad.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, I can hear you now. Sorry. Hey, sorry about that. I was on the phone and didn't realize I couldn't get in to talk, so.
You were invisible for a second. I don't know where you went, but we're glad you're here with us.
Okay, all right. Well, so like Cameron said, we are, over the last, since 2012, we've been exploring permanent supportive housing, and one of the advantages that I think we've had is that we've not really been a housing or transitional housing or emergency shelter provider. We've been a drop-in center is one of the main thing we've done for the last 20 years. And so we're not really making a major change from something that was already really developed for us. But so in 2012, can you still hear me? You can still hear me?
You're there.
Okay, all right. So in 2012, we had a house. We're working with people almost exclusively people experiencing chronic homelessness, and so we knew that they needed a solution that was more long-term, that was more comprehensive, and we knew a little bit about permanent supportive housing, not much. We did know that the people that we had been working with, many of them for decades at that point, had just not been able to meet any of the expectations of programs that had conditions or programs in general. So we knew especially from our faith perspective, we knew we had to have a heavy amount of patience and grace and consistency with the people through the process. So we started permanent supportive housing and didn't know what we were doing pretty much, and had some success, had some struggles, definitely with our own people. The mentality that they brought from previous experiences in conditional programs was hard to break, and still is. I mean, even after a year of being in a permanent residence, people who had been homeless for multiple years and had dropped out of every program imaginable will still continue to ask us, are you sure this is for real? Is this really going to be available? And am I not going to get, you know, they just expect from previous experiences to that it's only a matter of time before they don't meet the expectations or they disappoint somebody and then they lose housing. So it's been cool to kind of reassure them and have a program, have an environment that supports people for a permanent home where they can really settle in and live there for many years. So in 2014, we purchased property. The advantages we have in Lubbock is that property is typically cheap. We bought some property in our area with some dilapidated structures on them. We had 4 lots at the time, and that kind of caused us to step back and reassess everything we were doing and everything we thought we wanted to do. And so at the time we created a housing task force, and we called it the PSH task force at the time, and it was made up of social workers, people from the consortium, people who knew a little bit about homelessness, as well as people that knew about housing and property development and construction, all that stuff. So one of the first things we did was we just stepped back and started with some research about what the best way to help especially chronically homeless individuals, since that's the primary group we work with. And we came across Housing First. We read the book Pathways to Housing First by Sam Simberius. We did tons of research, and then we brought all that information, and as a task force, it was pretty clear to us that, one, this was one of the best ways we could help people who are chronically homeless, that even though it's somewhat controversial in some ways, it's definitely a paradigm shift in people's thinking, it works. And, you know, if our end goal is really helping people who are the most vulnerable and the most in need stay in housing and, you know, get out of that highly vulnerable long-term chronic situation in chronic homelessness, then even though it was an adjustment for our thinking, that's our end goal, so that's what we wanted to do, and we believed it worked. So the next thing we did, we spent about a year selling Housing First to ourselves and our board of directors. And of course, in Lubbock, Texas, and conservative thinking people politically and religiously and all that stuff, when you come to somebody and you tell them that we're not going to require somebody to be sober, and we're not going to require people to have a job, and we're not going to require people to do all these things that we want them to do, we're not going to give them UAs or anything like that. People thought that was the weirdest thing ever. They thought it was so strange. They thought we were definitely going to be creating some flop houses, some dope houses. But it took us a while to explain it. We really tried to work through it internally, and then also once we got to the point where we convinced our board that this really does work and it really is the most helpful way for our people. And you know, one of our board members who's a local minister in a church, he phrased it, I think, one of the best ways that I see Housing First, and one of the best ways we've been able to sell this to the larger community is that for people who have complex issues, for people that have a lot of obstacles in the way, this is one of the best opportunities that we could possibly give them. It doesn't mean that they're going to just snap out of everything and all of a sudden be perfect residents and we're not going to have any problems, but otherwise they don't without this kind of low barrier, high level of support environment. So from there, we really tried to work on how we sell this to the community. We created a little mini documentary that really stressed both the economic sense of Housing First and the social reality that for people who are chronically homeless, they've just tried and tried and tried all these different things and not found success. And we showed examples specifically in Texas and Dallas, an organization called City Square kind of used them as a spotlight to show that it is working in Texas, and it is helping people who are chronically homeless. And so from there, it's kind of taken off. We have 6 properties. We're currently developing 10 units of Housing First through a grant we received locally. It's one of the odd things. We've not received any federal funding at all. Everything's been done by private funding so far. And we're using coordinated entry. We're using the VI-SPA data especially to prioritize the most vulnerable people. One of the things I've realized in the short time we've been doing this that's kind of become an irritant to me is that there's a lot of people who say that they want to do permanent supportive housing and Housing First, but they're still prioritizing people that they think have high potential for success, and that's troubling because the people at the bottom, the people who have the highest level of vulnerability, will never have a chance if that's not intentionally sought out to prioritize those people. So VI-SPA, we're supporters of that. We think that's a great tool to help us identify the people in the greatest need. So we've got support team in place. We're building partnerships in the city. We're meeting with our Chamber of Commerce and local neighborhood development committees in the city, and they're really buying into Housing First. It's kind of surprising because of West Texas, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of. It's been a big educational journey for us, but it makes sense to the numbers, which conservative people like, and bottom line, it's going to get the people that, yeah, they cost the most, but they tend to also create the most concern for people in communities. They're people that are out and about, very visible and sleeping around businesses and whatever. And so if you can convince communities that we're not taking the family, although we care about them as well, the family that's doubling up with somebody and filling all of our spots with people like that. We're actually filling these spots with people that are the most visible, the most concerning to communities, and we're bringing them off the streets permanently and providing long-term solutions to them. The community really has just bought into that, and we believe that. So that's a little bit of the journey. I don't know what other questions you have, but we're still on it. We started with single site, building our own structures. Sorry, last thing I'll share about it. Because we're providing housing and property that we own and that we are managing, the advantage of that is that we don't have to go through landlords and convince people, which we anticipated being even more difficult in West Texas. Our local VA, however, is doing a great job of putting veterans in housing using Housing First. They put over 75 veterans in Lubbock in housing using Housing First. And but we do anticipate and hope to, in the near future, expand our Housing First into scattered site, because we estimate there's probably at least 100 people in Lubbock who would qualify and as chronically homeless and really benefit from Housing First. So that's what we're doing. That's where we want to go.
Thank you so much, Chad. It's great to hear from someone in a rural area that is doing Housing First on a community level that you are. I think, so many things stood out to me, but specifically, my experience in transitioning into Housing First program management was the same with, clients really just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop and that not happening, and them finally feeling comfortable because they have a home and being able to then, you know, work on other issues to really improve their quality of life. I think that's just key. And also, you know, I think you all are lucky in that you had a year and no one else telling you what to do to sell the model to yourselves, you know. And I mentioned earlier in the webinar, you know, some of our grantees are not going to have that option because we are really working on this as a HUD goal, but I think we're all fortunate in this case that I think HUD really got it right this time, and we see the value and benefits in this model and just such high potential for success, and really, again, focusing on those most vulnerable, using the tool. You know, we want, and that's what we're working on with HUD, right? Chronically homeless, veterans, most vulnerable, those that, but not for this assistance, are likely to, and I'm going to say, die in the streets. And these are usually the most visible folks in your communities, and they're also those that are, and again, you know, depending on who we're trying to appeal to, they're often frequent utilizers of your emergency response systems, and we know that that costs the communities money. Just really appreciate your thoughtfulness and your willingness to share, and want to ask at this time, if anyone in the audience has any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box or raise your hand if anyone has questions for Chad. Also, we put the link to the video Chad was referring to in the chat box if you all want to see that. I'm going to have to start singing to you all.
Yeah. This is Mary. I have one comment. I think Chad made a great point about the minister on his board of directors that made the comment about, you know, how can we best help the people who are most in need. And I think that can really resonate with faith communities. And for a lot of you in our rural areas, and our larger areas probably too, our faith communities are such a valuable part of what we do. And if you're not already connected to them, I would encourage you to do so. And particularly coming from this perspective of helping those who are least fortunate and most in need of our services. I think that's a really great place to start with building the momentum for Housing First in your community. And faith communities are already out there and very active in a lot of cases. So that was a great step.
Yeah.
Again, we should start a betting pool on when I start singing on these. One, because, again, I want to be supportive and helpful and not torture you, but there's a Pink Floyd song coming to my head that I feel like would get people responding in this particular moment. So just want to say again, we've got a really not only incredible man, but great resource on a topic that will impact you all on the line, and take advantage of this opportunity. Any questions, comments?
They want to hear you sing.
No, they don't. All right. Well, the good news is we know where to find Chad. I'm not going to blast his contact information out to all of you because there are 50 of you. But if you want to get in touch with him, you can get in touch with us and we can make that connection for you. And just would encourage you all, again, please start reading up on Housing First, educate yourselves. The book that Chad mentioned by Sam Tiberis for Pathways to Housing is a great way to start. And I'll list the same websites I listed earlier. NAEH, USICH, and CSH, all there's Housing First, all over the place. And again, Sam Tiberis, and the spelling is tricky. I can't spell it. TSEMBERIS. Yeah.
I think it's Semberis.
You're right. I always butcher it. Also, again, I'm plugging NAEH. If you can attend, we know it's far away for most of you, and it's can be costly. A lot of great resources there. Definitely a lot of Housing First best practice sessions. We'll of course be going and bringing that information back to you all as we do, but thank you all again for your time today. If you think of questions or comments after the meeting, you know where to find us.
Pathways to Housing.
Yes, Pathways to Housing.
Let me find it. I'll find something in the chat.
Okay, and Craig is going to link that into the chat box. I guess, Chad, I would just ask you, do you have any kind of final thoughts? I know that it sounds like the coalition is getting ready to also do some work with the Housing Authority. I guess if you could recommend to a project the first thing to do in looking towards shifting to this model, what would your one thing be?
Good question.
You're muted, Chad.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think research is the key because it's such a paradigm shift in your thinking and practice. And so, like I said earlier, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people talk about housing first in the last year, and turns out they really don't get the concept, and they think they're talking about that. What they're talking about is something that's housing and supportive, but that's about it, and it's not really a developed understanding of housing first. And I think that's really important to set your foundation with a good understanding of not only the practice but why and why it works, because you're definitely going to run into lots of skepticism and questions, and if you don't understand it and believe it thoroughly, then you're going to run into problems later.
You got it. Thank you so much.
Chad, we actually have one question. Did you have any support from your city council with Housing First?
Not officially, but we do have city council members who are on board in terms of, we've not gone to the city council. That's one of the beautiful things about Housing First and permanent supportive housing, as well as you're not looking to build shelters or big facilities usually. You're usually doing stuff that fits right in a already zoned location or market available housing. So it's not like we had to go ask for official support or permission from the city council, which was nice because nobody likes to do that. But they've definitely come on board over time, and but there's been no official action on their part to say yes or no or whatever. They're just kind of hearing about it through presentations and conversations that are taking place in the community and slowly buying into it.
Okay. We've got one more for you, Chad. How did your coalition help you?
Well,
They did what you said.
good question. The truth is, there's no permanent supportive housing going on in Lubbock and there's no Housing First going on in Lubbock except for through the VA. And so the connection through the VA, which our primary connection is through the coalition, has been one of the best relationships we've had, because they're doing it and doing it successfully, and they've really been a knowledge base for us. But as far as the coalition as a whole, it's a new venture for the community, and so there's not been a whole lot of resources to draw upon there, other than people that are also interested in chronic homelessness generally, and I would say coordinated entry is the other part that people are slowly getting more supportive of, because of the fact that it not only tells us how many people are here, but what their situation is and what kind of services they really need, rather than just whatever random sources or services we might have. It's really telling us the gaps that we need to fill.
Do we have any more questions for Chad today? Type them in the chat box.
Okay, Chad, thank you again. We know that your coalition meeting is today, so you've had lots of meetings. I can't really think of a better way to spend a day with the work that we do, and you guys didn't have to hear me sing. Thank you all for your time and your thoughtful questions. We're planning to bring in local providers and coalition leads and lots of folks that are doing work in the community onto these calls in the future. We know that you all can learn best from each other, and again, we're here to support you. As Chad said, for Carpenters Church, it sounds like it wasn't a huge transition since they were just kind of getting in the PSH business, but it was a transition for, and still is, for his staff in the community. And many of us here at THN have been through that and are here to support you all through that, and really looking forward to shifting towards this model within the balance of state so that we can not only continue to fund our existing projects, but to bring in more permanent supportive housing through PSH and rapid rehousing, and knowing those will be housing first projects. So these are exciting conversations to have. We, again, thank you, Chad. Thank you all for your time today. We'll be sending these materials out. We have some questions? No. Okay. Don't have any more questions. We recognize you all are incredibly busy. We want to make these meetings really useful for you and want to involve and engage you in them as much as possible. I imagine over the next couple of months we are going to be surveying you on what you would like to see come out of these meetings. We, of course, have things we have to cover, but in the meantime, if you have feedback or thoughts or suggestions, we are absolutely open to hearing those. So again, just thank you to all the staff today that was able to present. Thank you to Chad Wheeler. Thank you to all of you, and we will see you at our next meeting. That will be May 25th from 2 to 4 o'clock, same time, same place. Keep an eye out for our email, and y'all have a great rest of your week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.